Speaking of shared responsibility, this next session brings together leaders who have worked across classrooms, systems, and communities. We are very excited to bring together voices who have shaped education in very different ways, but with one shared belief: leadership is built through people.
Please welcome Wendy Kopp, a movement builder who has built a global network of independent organizations working to develop collective leadership through Teach for All.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, please.
Moderating this chat is my dear friend from the Samhita Academy, Vijaylaxmi Aramani, a grade 11 student bringing curiosity, honesty, and most importantly, the learner's perspective to this conversation. Over to you, Vijaylaxmi, to take this conversation forward. All the very best.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you, Shraddha. Looking forward to the conversation. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Shubhu uncle, for setting the context for us this morning. When you spoke about leadership being everywhere and not just at the top, it resonated with all of us. It challenged a very common idea all of us carry. Often, we think of leadership as something distant: a title, a position, or the person at the front of the room. But maybe it's not just that. And that connects with InvokED's theme: from mission to movement. Because movement is when many people collaborate and not when one person leads it perfectly. To begin, let's start with a game. Ma'am, here I'll be reading out a few statements on leadership, and you have to reply with either leadership, not leadership, or it depends. And audience, you can also join us with a thumbs up, thumbs down, or if you're not sure, even this is fine. And there are no right or wrong answers. Ma'am, let's start.
Okay.
So my first statement is leadership being the smartest person in the room?
No, not
Audience,
leadership.
what do you think about it? Wow, we see a lot of thumbs down. Is leadership admitting that you don't have an answer?
Yes.
Audience, can we have more reply from that part? Nice. Is leadership letting others take the lead?
It depends, I would say. And
Audience?
I'm saying that because we should all be exercising leadership. Like, it takes everyone. And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes we need to exercise agency ourselves.
Yeah. Audience, would most of us agree with the maybe? Is leadership changing mind publicly?
Yes. I mean, if you change your mind, then
Okay. Audience? Good. Is leadership starting small rather than going big?
I think that depends.
Audience?
Some depends on the idea. I mean, some things should start small and some things should start big.
Yeah. Audience? Nice. That was very interactive. And we have got diverse answers from our audience, and that shows how complex leadership is. Now, let's move on to our fireside conversation. Ma'am, honestly, when I hear the word leader, I often think of someone powerful, in charge, or maybe even intimidating. Is that true, or is that what books and movies have taught us?
It's amazing how much that paradigm still, like, even the fact that you're asking the question means we still have that paradigm. Although there are some books that have challenged that. So I guess I think about leadership in the way Mr. Shibulal just described in that absolutely beautiful speech, which captures so much of probably what we've all learned about what it takes to change systems, which is in terms of collective leadership, meaning it takes everyone exercising agency towards an important purpose and working together, like stepping up from individual pursuits and collaborating and learning together in pursuit of that purpose.
Thank you, ma'am. That helped me like learn different, uh, leadership. It tells differently about leadership. Ma'am, you often talk about teaching as a collective form of leadership, but as a student, I see my teachers as just teachers, like they're just coming and teaching, and leaders as someone at the top. So, what made you connect the two, and how should students like us stop separating teachers and leaders?
I love this question. I think several years ago, we came together across the Teach for All network and really reconsidered what we were working towards for students. We had started focused on equity, which is still the bedrock of our network, but we had interpreted that as meaning like catching kids up in today's education system. And over time, we realized how insufficient that is because this system was built decades and decades ago. And ultimately, we realized it wasn't preparing kids to navigate today's world and to develop kind of holistically with the agency and awareness and well-being and connectedness to people and planet and problem-solving and critical thinking skills necessary to shape a better future for themselves and for all of us. So we came together around this different vision, like, okay, one day all kids need to have the kind of education and support and opportunity to shape a better future. And then we realized we don't know how to do that. So we started studying classrooms around the world where we were seeing that in classrooms. Those rare, exceptional classrooms where students are developing as leaders so that they can shape a better future. And what we learned in those classrooms is that we were seeing collective leadership in those classrooms, meaning everyone leading, the students and the teacher. And so it really led us to a different paradigm of teaching in our own minds, where teachers view their kids as whole people who can lead today, and they see themselves as learners alongside their students. So they're facilitating kind of a sense of community and bringing out everyone's kind of best selves and mobilizing their kids to actually solve the problems in their communities. So that's kind of where that idea of teaching as collective leadership came from. But I love your question because it was like, how can we as students, because we think about how can we as teachers unlearn how we were taught and start seeing our students and ourselves and our communities in a different way. Like that mindset shift is the key to fostering teaching as collective leadership. But I love your question because you asked, how can students stop viewing our teachers as the sage on the stage who has all the knowledge? And I love that. That's what we need is students actually viewing their teachers as partners in their learning journey and themselves as assuming responsibility for their education and exercising agency in their own learning journey. So we need mindset shifts all around from the adults and from the students.
Thank you, ma'am. When you spoke about the collective leadership, that is what will stay with me through the day or maybe full year, and that will help me look at my teachers differently. Ma'am, we all know that leadership is an evolving journey. So, would you like to share one moment where you had to rethink or change your leadership approach?
There have been many moments, and I think my journey is one that started with, I mean, as an entrepreneur, I mean, starting 37 years ago with this idea out of college to start Teach for America. I mean, it was just me. You know, I was doing everything. So it's like, if it's going to get done, you're going to do it. Like I had such an individual paradigm of leadership, maybe fostered by the American culture as well. But over time, I've kind of just seen so much evidence that what we need is collective leadership. And that's a tough transition. Like it takes unlearning like what we thought leadership was and learning a whole different set of mindsets and capabilities. And it's a never-ending journey. But to your specific question, maybe I'll share a moment. I mean, so we've been on this journey across Teach for All to develop what we call collective leadership, what you've heard about today. Like, how do we develop more and more collective leadership all over the world? And in that pursuit, we do a lot to foster teaching as collective leadership, knowing that that experience will be so transformative for the teachers themselves, and they'll go on to exercise collective leadership in their communities. But I hadn't really rethought how we worked within our own organization. And, you know, I still remember a particular day, I think it was almost exactly 10 years ago, and I was reading our staff satisfaction surveys. I don't know how many of you run organizations or teams and look at these surveys. It's usually not that thrilling of an experience. I mean, people have lots of concerns, right? Almost inevitably, and still. But I was just realizing that despite all of our efforts to be the best managers we knew how to be, I mean, at that point, I'd been on this journey for 25 years. We were doing everything right based on what the textbooks and everything would say, and yet it seemed like people were just getting more and more unhappy. I think in part because a new generation was coming through and they had different expectations. And after reading that, I opened a book called Reinventing Organizations and I didn't put it down for the rest of the day. And it led me on a journey to basically realize that, you know, if we don't develop collective leadership in our own organizations, it's probably unlikely that we're going to actually fulfill this mission of developing collective leadership in communities. So we ended up rethinking everything about how our organization operates as well. So whereas we used to have, for it as one example, a senior team of people who would get together every 6 weeks and make all the big decisions, we no longer have a senior team. Like, we've pushed so much decision-making and responsibility out as close as possible to the work. We started investing so much more in the leadership development of everyone in our organization, and doing things kind of out in public to build everyone's context so that they could have the context they need to make the decisions. So that's quite a journey itself, like really unlearning what I thought I knew about how to manage an organization in a kind of consensus-driven way over 25 years to say, like, no more consensus. Like, let's empower people to make decisions and enable them to tap the collective wisdom in that pursuit.
Thank you, ma'am. Your experience and journey tells us how leaders need not be rigid, but they'll have to be flexible in their decisions in certain situations. As we come towards the end of this conversation, I would like to ask one last question, ma'am. So if leadership today isn't about being perfect or powerful, what is that one piece of advice you would like to give for young people like me who want to develop their leadership qualities?
I think about this question all the time. I'm kind of obsessed with your generation because I think what you decide to do with your energy is the biggest, I mean, that predicts the future. I mean, truly, like the most incredible, and I can see you yourself are one of the most promising leaders we have in this society. So what you do with that time and energy matters so much. So my biggest piece of advice and my biggest hope and wish is that many more people like you will decide that your first job should be in proximity to the biggest inequities and challenges, social challenges, your communities and country and our global society faces. And I say that because what you do shapes who you become. And what I've seen through our own work is that all these young people who teach as one way to gain proximity in marginalized communities, it's such a transformative experience for them. And we have a lot of research that shows that. Like, they come to believe differently in their own potential to make a difference. Like, their sense of agency and sense of possibility goes way up, which is interesting because they're facing the biggest challenges, but getting close to them, you realize we can solve them. their belief in the assets in the communities in which they're working and in their students goes way up. And their understanding of the situation completely shifts. And it is kind of this learning journey that leads people to realize the complexity of the situation, and in fact that we need collective leadership in order to solve the problems. So I truly believe if many more of the most promising young people would decide that instead of trying to get the biggest job in the tallest skyscraper they can get, the first job they take should be in communities, on the ground, working directly with people, I think that will change the world, truly.
Thank you, ma'am. When you spoke about, how we should start the leadership in community, it really inspired me. Thank you for that advice. So what stays with me from this conversation is that leadership should all start with community and all that we should have collective leadership. And leadership in the new age is less about certainty and it's more about the courage. It's the courage to listen, to learn, to change, and to act together. Thank you, Wendy ma'am, for
Thank
sharing so
you.
openly.
Thank you so
And thank you
much.
to our audience for being very interactive. Thank you.